Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in Freshman English, and we now turn in your volume number 2 to page 604, 605 and following as we introduce you now to Unit 4. Unit 3 was all about nonfiction. Unit 2 about short stories. Unit 4 for us will be about the poem. Okay? Now as we begin, however, we are changing our big question. The big question of Unit 3 was, how do you make distinctions between knowledge and understanding or wisdom? Please jot down the big question on 604, 605. How does communication change us? It is a fascinating kind of big question because, of course, communication doesn't just mean talking, does it? Notice you've got the exploration of the big question on 604. You've got some vocabulary that we'll be paying attention to on 605. Make sure you know all of those words as we get ready now to study our elements of poetry. I'm with you on page 606. We want to go through this now quickly. Poetry, imaginative literature that uses precise, musical, emotionally charged language. There's your definition of the genre of poetry, right? It will combine any number of precise meanings of words. We've got several different kinds of poetry. Write them down. We'll be looking at 3. Lyric, narrative, dramatic. All 3 of them we'll be seeing as examples, okay? We'll have all kinds of things we'll be focusing on. Who is the speaker of the poem? Write this down. We don't assume that the speaker of the poem is the poet. No, no, no. Sometimes it is the poet, but we don't assume that, okay? We will be looking at lines and stanzas, the way that a poem is grouped. We'll talk about things like a quatrain, which is 4 groups of 4 lines put together. On page 606, we'll be talking about rhythm and meter, the basic beat of the poem. We'll be talking about the stressed and unstressed syllables. Do you see those little marks on 606 on the right-hand side there? And those divisions that we call feet. We'll be talking about scansion or scanning meter, right, with unstressed stress. We'll talk about an iamb, which is a beat that's common in English poetry. Ba-bum, ba-bum. We'll see a lot of that. Okay, we'll have the trochee, we'll have the spondy, we'll have the dactyl, we'll have the anapest as all different kinds of rhythms. I hope that all of those are in your notes on page 606. When we're talking about rhyme, we're talking about sound devices. We're talking about exact rhyme, true rhyme, slant rhyme on page 607, end rhyme, internal rhyme. All of this we're going to see. Rhyme scheme will matter for us. So, for example, the last word of a line. So, for example, do you see the example there where you'll have an A, B, C, C? I hope that you recognize that and you understand that. Again, all of this we're going to come back to in our study of poetics, right? We're going to look at several sound devices. Look at them in the box on page 607. Alliteration, repetition of consonant sounds. The snake sneaked past the snail. Assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds followed by different consonants in 2 or more stressed syllables. The green leaves, you can hear the repetition, fluttered in the breeze. Consonants, repetition of final consonant sounds in stressed syllables with different vowel sounds. The king sang a song, all those G sounds, right? Onomatopoeia, which of course when you were a child always was a funny word to hear, is the use of words to initiate or imitate sounds. The bees buzzed, the brook gurgled, words that sound kind of like what they give off. Now, about each one of these, remember for your notes, as we have said in earlier conversations, 2 parts to any of this at level 2B. What is it and how does it work? That how does it work part for us in our poetic study will be huge, okay? Now, poetic language is introduced on page 608. We've got denotation and connotation, the denotation and the connotation of a word. Denotation is the dictionary definition of a word. Connotation, all of its implied or emotional associations, right? And we'll be talking about that in large measure as we study poetry. Meaning and tone, huge, right? As we're talking about the poet's emotional attitude toward his or her subject. Imagery, that is to say the word pictures that are drawn. We've got examples of that on 608. The figurative language, we've got 3 that we'll be focusing on page 609. The simile, comparison using like or as. The metaphor, obviously one thing comparing something else. And then finally personification, giving human qualities to non-human things. And then they give you an example of that. Make a note, we've got this idea about the differences between free and formal verse. Free, a type of poem that exhibits poetic language but does not follow fixed patterns. Formal verse, that will follow fixed patterns. And then we've got types of formal poetry. See them listed there in 609? Make sure they're in your notes. Ballad, haiku, English sonnet, ode, concrete poem. All of these are important for us. Now, we're going to do some close readings of 4 poems here in the next few minutes together. Poetic language and meaning will be our focus. The elements of poetry combine to build meaning and tone. Notice your chart here at the bottom of the page. Word choice and connotation. Sensory language and imagery. Figurative language matters. Rhyme matters. Other sound devices matter. And of course, form itself. Now we're going to look at all of this as it relates at level 2B, along with doing our normal annotative work at level 2A, themes, messages, and 3A, how does it relate to other titles, in 3B. All right, let's turn now to our first model. Your textbook company in Unit 4 does what it did in Units 1, 2, and 3, where in the opening pages it gives you a sense of how to study this stuff. So these are important bits of practice for us. Let's work together. First of all, the text. It's called Barter by Sara Teasdale. Put it in your notes. Sara Teasdale, 1884 to 1933, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. The poem Barter is from her collection Love Songs, which won the first Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1918. So we're looking at a major gun. A barter, by the way, is a trade or an exchange of items. Now already they're going to show us through color code language some of the information. Let's at least just work with the poem itself and then come back to talk about it, all right? Barter by Sara Teasdale. Life has loveliness to sell. All beautiful and splendid things. Blue waves whitened on a cliff. Soaring fire that sways and sings. And children's faces looking up, holding wonder in a cup. Life has loveliness to sell. Music like a curve of gold. Scent of pine trees and the rain. Eyes that love you, arms that hold, and for your spirit's still delight, holy thoughts that star the night. Spend all you have for loveliness. Buy it and never count the cost. For one white singing hour of peace, count many a year of strife well lost. And for a breath of ecstasy, give all you've been or could be. Now, again, your textbook company will have a few things they want to point out. For example, notice we have end rhymes, right? That will add a musical dimension to the poem and help shape each stanza. We have figurative language, right at number 5. The use of personification turns the fire into a living and joyous being. Figurative language again at number 6. The simile allows the reader to see music as something tangible and as part of life's loveliness. The other sound devices at number 7, notice you have alliteration and the repeating of the I and the C, of the L and the C sounds, which add to the poem's music. And then finally, at number 8, you have word choice and connotation. These words connote powerfully positive emotions and convey a joyful tone. Let's work at level 2 quickly. What is it this poem is saying? Well, at 2A, it borrows heavily from the title. Life is about an exchange. You do this to get that. And she says it right away. Life has loveliness to sell. All beautiful and splendid things. And that's the thesis of the poem. After that, she's simply going to tell you what's amazing about the life you get to live in. But let's say something at 2A quickly. Notice it's all simple stuff. Notice it's not stuff you can buy. Notice it's stuff you normally might ignore, and yet she says, this is the stuff life is made of. What are those things? Well, blue waves, soaring fire, a child's face looking up holding wonder in a cup, right? And then she repeats the line, life has loveliness to sell. Now she gives us more. What's the most amazing stuff in your life? Music. Notice the simile comparison using like or as. Music is like a curve of gold. Jot down what you think that means. A curve of gold. Are we talking about a ring? I've had freshmen that say, that's a fascinating idea. That the most important thing in my life is music. If you took away that music, that would be the end of my life. Because music is so important. Notice she's saying the most important thing about that music is that is your life. That's why your life is so precious. It's a gift, if you will. It's a trade-off, you might say, right? Notice the scent of pine trees in the rain. We know this one because of where we live, right? The love that you get to exchange, right, as well. Spend all you have for loveliness is the way the third stanza will open. Buy it and never count the cost. Whatever it takes, enjoy your life. One white singing hour of peace is enough to count a year of strife well lost. In other words, all of the pain of your life is worth it for the few moments of joy. That 2A, all kinds of powerful messages. How about 2B? Well, we mentioned several here. Notice how the poem is constructed into a series of stanzas where Sara Teasdale is saying, life does matter, but it matters for the simple stuff. Of course, let's jump to 3A really quickly. What is for you the song that teaches this same truth? That life is about the simple things. It's not about the really big things. It's about the little things that make your life so powerfully meaningful. What is your favorite movie that teaches that idea? Finally, at 3B, let's ask this question about Barter. She makes the argument that your life is this unbelievable gift. It's precious because of the simple things. For you, what's the most precious thing in your life that's simple? What have you experienced that's profoundly simple? And of course, let's say this out loud. And this is one of those points about poetry right away that we want to make in our 4th unit. Notice how Teasdale, in just a few words, can say something that some people, it takes an entire novel to say. Right? Think about the power of that. We'll come back to it. Thank you.